The night the storm came for me, it arrived without anger. Snow fell the way memories do, quietly at first, then all at once, until the world was unrecognizable. I remember standing at the edge of the ridge, my coat stiff with frost, my breath sounding too loud in the open dark. Dry Creek lay somewhere behind me, its lamps long swallowed by white, its people already asleep and dreaming their careful dreams without me in them. That winter had learned my name early. It had taken the ranch, the horses, the small hope I once kept, folded in my chest like a letter never sent. Folks in town said the fire had been my fault. They never asked how the wind turned, how the beam cracked, how a single spark can choose its own destiny. Silence, I learned, makes an easier villain than truth. So I kept to the cabin beyond the cottonwoods, where judgment didn't bother to follow, and loneliness at least told me its name. The sound that stopped me that night was not a howl. It was smaller than that. A thin, broken sound, like breath trying not to be noticed. I followed it down the slope, boots sinking deep. Hands numb despite the gloves Rowan had once knitted before she learned to look through me instead of at me. The snow there was drifted high, a soft grave waiting for something careless enough to lie down. And in it, barely visible, was a shape no bigger than my forearm, curled tight against the cold. I knelt without thinking. The world narrowed to that small body and the way it trembled. A puppy, I thought. A foolish thing to be out in weather that could split stone. Its fur was pale as ash, matted with ice, its breath shallow but steady. When I touched it, it did not snap or cry. It only opened its eyes and looked at me with a calm that felt older than fear. Something in my chest shifted, surprised by the weight of being needed. I wrapped it in my coat and held it close, my own warmth leaking into it like a promise I wasn't sure I could keep. The storm pressed in, impatient, urging us both to lie down and sleep. Instead, I turned toward the cabin, each step an argument with the wind. I spoke aloud to keep us awake, words meant for no one, stories without endings. The puppy listened. I could feel that much. Inside, the fire took its time. Wood hissed and cracked, the room filling with the sharp scent of sap. I laid the puppy near the hearth and watched its sides rise and fall. When I reached for water, it followed me with its eyes unblinking. There was no gratitude in that gaze, no plea, only attention. I had forgotten how powerful that could be. Days passed the way winter days do, indistinct and pale. The storm loosened its grip, but did not leave. The puppy ate and slept and grew. Too quickly, if I'm honest. Its paws were large for its body, its shoulders broadening in a way that made me pause. I told myself the cold made everything look bigger. I told myself many things that winter. At night, I talked. About the ranch, about the fire, about the way the town's eyes slid past me like I was already gone. The puppy lay near the fire, head on its paws, listening as if the words mattered. Sometimes, when the wind found a new way to howl, it would lift its head and answer not with sound, but with a stillness that seemed to steady the room. I named it Ash, for the color of its fur and the way it felt like something pulled from ruin. Rowan came on the 7th day, her knock soft, uncertain. She stood in the doorway with a basket and a look she had practiced in the mirror, kind but guarded. The cold had carved new lines at the corners of her eyes, and when she smiled, it was with only half her mouth, as if the rest were saving itself for later. "I brought bread," she said, holding out the basket. "And salt." I stepped aside. She did not comment on the way the cabin smelled of smoke and fur, or how Ash rose when she entered, tall enough now that his back brushed the edge of the table. Her eyes lingered on him for a moment too long, then returned to me. She set the basket down and smoothed her gloves, hands restless. "He's grown," she said finally. "He was hungry," I answered. It was not the whole truth, but it was enough. She stayed only a little while. We spoke of small things, the schoolhouse roof, the way the creek froze solid by nightfall. When she left, she touched my arm, a brief, grounding wait. Ash watched her go, ears forward, head tilted, as if memorizing the sound of her steps. The town noticed after that. It always does. Someone saw tracks near my cabin, too wide, too deep. Someone else heard a rumor about a beast roaming the hills? Silas Boone stopped me near the store one morning, his voice low and careful, like concern, trying on the clothes of warning. "Best be cautious, Elias," he said. "People get nervous when they don't understand what they're seeing." I nodded, because nodding cost less than arguing. At night, I kept Ash close. The fire burned lower, the cold pressing harder against the walls. Ash slept lightly, rising at the smallest sound. When the wind shifted, he would stand at the door, his silhouette filling the frame, a pale shadow against the dark. One evening, as the snow began again, I watched him step outside. He lifted his head, scenting the air, his body long and sure, no trace of the trembling thing I'd found in the drift. For a moment, he looked back at me, not like an animal checking for permission, but like a sentinel taking measure of the ground he meant to guard. The storm gathered itself, patient and vast. I closed the door against it, heart heavy with questions I wasn't ready to ask. Outside, Ash stood listening to the snow, and the snow, it seemed, listened back. The truth did not arrive all at once. It crept in the way winter does, patient and undeniable. Ash no longer slept curled by the fire. He chose the threshold, body stretched long, breath slow, ears tuned to distances I could not imagine. His shadow filled the doorway, and sometimes when the fire dipped low, it seemed to move before he did. I learned to read the cabin by his posture danger, when he stiffened. Calm when he lay his head on his paws and watched the flames, as if remembering something older than both of us. Rowan returned more often. Never empty-handed, never staying long enough to invite comment. She brought tea, mended a tear in my sleeve, set bread on the table without asking where it should go. When Ash rose, she did not retreat. She studied him the way a person studies a difficult truth. Eyes steady, fear acknowledged, but not allowed to rule. Once, when the wind rattled the shutters and Ash pressed closer to the door, she reached out and touched his fur. He did not flinch. Neither did she. That small exchange said more than any promise could have. The town's patience thinned with the daylight. Livestock went missing, and though no one saw anything, the blame found me easily. It always does when fear needs a name. Silas Boone's concern sharpened into warning, then hardened into threat. I heard the whispers before I heard the knockmen talking too loudly, boots scuffing with purpose. I did not answer. Ash stood beside me, unmoving, his presence a quiet weight against my leg. When they left, their words lingered like smoke. I made plans to go. Not because I believed them, but because I had learned what happens when you stay too long in a place that has already decided who you are. Rowan found me packing at dawn. She said nothing at first, only folded a shirt I'd dropped and set it neatly in the bag. When she looked up, her eyes were bright. Not with tears, but with resolve. "You don't have to run," she said. "I do," I answered. It was easier than admitting how tired I was of being defended. The storm returned that night, heavier than before. Snow erased the tracks as soon as they were made, the world reduced to a narrow circle of light and sound. Then came the shouting, panicked, ragged. Children, 2 of them lost near the ridge where the drift swallowed fences whole. The town gathered in confusion, lanterns bobbing uselessly against the white. Someone looked at me, then away. Someone else said my name like it was a last resort. I did not wait for permission. I knelt in the snow and pressed my forehead to Ash's, breath mingling with his. I did not command him. I asked, "There are differences that matter?" I told him where the children had last been seen, how the wind favored the east, how the snow deepened near the cottonwoods. He listened, eyes intent, then turned toward the storm. Rowan stood behind me, her hand finding mine. "Come back," she whispered. I did not know which of us she meant. Ash disappeared into the white without a sound. The hours that followed stretched thin, every minute a test of faith. The wind howled, and with it rose the familiar ache of being powerless. Lanterns guttered. Voices faltered. I kept my eyes on the dark, listening for a sign I could not name. It came as a stillness. The storm paused, as if holding its breath. Out of the snow emerged Ash, his fur rimed with ice, his eyes bright with purpose. Behind him, small shapes moved. Guided by bodies, I barely saw shadows with eyes like embers, silent and watchful. The children stumbled forward, wrapped in fur and instinct, unharmed and alive. No one spoke. There are moments when language knows better than to intrude. The wolves lingered just long enough to ensure the children were safe. It melted back into the storm, leaving Ash standing alone between worlds. He looked at me once, a long, measuring glance that carried gratitude without obligation. Then he turned and followed the others, his form dissolving into the night he belonged to. The town exhaled. Apologies came later, awkward and insufficient. I did not stay to hear them. Rowan found me at the edge of the ridge, where the snow had thinned, and the sky showed a hint of morning. She took my hand, and this time I did not pull away. We stood there as the light returned, quiet and earned. I live differently now. The cabin is warmer, the silence less sharp. Sometimes when the wind shifts just right, I think I hear Ash moving through the trees, a presence rather than a sound. I do not call out. Love, I learned, does not always mean keeping what you save. If this tale settled something restless in you, if it reminded you that mercy often wears unfamiliar shapes, then stay with us. Subscribe and listen closely. Some stories only come back if you're willing to hear them whispered.